Welcome to a series called The End of Times, where we're going through the book of Revelation verse by verse to see what it is we should expect to happen and what it is we should be doing in the end times, or the time Jesus refers to as the end of the age. And where we are in the book of Revelation is we've gotten to chapter 15, keeping in mind that John is in the throne room of God witnessing these things, and he sees that the temple of the tabernacle of the testimony has been opened and that it is filling with smoke. And there are 4 living creatures about to give bowls of the final wrath and the final plagues of God. And that's where we're going to pick it up where we left off there, is Revelation 15, and we'll pick it up in 5. After these things I looked, and behold, the temple of the tabernacle of testimony in heaven was opened. Now the temple came the 7 angels, having the 7 plagues, clothed in pure bright linen, and having their chests girded with golden bands. Then one of the 4 living creatures gave to the 7 angels 7 golden bowls full of the wrath of God, who lives forever and ever. The temple was filled with smoke from the glory of God and from his power, and no one was able to enter the temple till the 7 plagues of the 7 angels were completed. Now, last time we talked specifically about what is this temple of testimony there in heaven. What is this, and why is it so important, and why is this final wrath and these plagues coming from this place? And this time what we're going to talk about specifically is the 4 living creatures, what their role is in this, as well as why is the temple filling with smoke? What is happening with the smoke? So that's what we're going to focus on this episode. Now, we did an episode on the 4 living creatures because we saw them originally at the very beginning of Revelation, in Revelation 4, when we're given the first glimpse of the throne room of God. And we did an episode on that. That is episode 17. Check that one out to give the great detail of what these 4 living creatures are. But the short of it is we can see them in Ezekiel as well, and what they are is they are 4 living creatures with 4 faces. They face they're omnidirectional, and they face into the throne of God. They're kind of like almost a part of the throne of God. They're constantly worshiping. They never stop worshiping. Their eyes are everywhere. They can see everything everywhere. Everywhere the Spirit goes, they go. Everywhere the throne of God goes, they go. It's a very significant thing, these 4 living creatures. They are literally part of the throne of God. And they are living creatures. Now, as we kind of look at them, we're going to go back to Ezekiel to address what are they doing here? Like what is it that they're giving these angels here? So we're going to go back to Ezekiel, where Ezekiel was essentially alive during a time when the besiegement of Jerusalem was taking place. Ezekiel was one of the first to be led off to Babylon, and as he's in Babylon, he has these visions of these 4 living creatures. And we're just going to pick it up there in Ezekiel 1, where Ezekiel sees these 4 living creatures, and when he sees God on his throne, he says this: "And above the firmament, above the heads, was the likeness of a throne, in appearance like a sapphire stone, and on the likeness of the throne was a likeness with the appearance of a man high above it. Also from the appearance of his waist and upward I saw, as it were, the color of amber, with the appearance of fire all around from within it. And from the appearance of his waist and downward I saw, as it were, the appearance of fire with brightness all around. Like the appearance of a rainbow in a cloud on a rainy day, so was the appearance of the brightness all around it. This was the appearance of the likeness of the glory of the Lord." Now, just like Revelation just said, that the temple was filled with the smoke from the glory of the Lord. This is very important. Like, this is the glory of the Lord that we're witnessing here. It's literally smoke filling the temple from the glory of the Lord. So this wrath, this final wrath, and these final plagues are literally coming from the creatures being fed by the glory of the Lord. Now, what we see, and then what Ezekiel saw, let's just talk about that for a second. What he saw, these 4 living creatures, he had a few more visions of them, and he saw them above the temple of God in Jerusalem. So these 4 living creatures are above the temple of God in Jerusalem. In Revelation, they're above the temple of the testimony in heaven. But what Ezekiel sees is these creatures, they leave the temple. They physically leave it, because then that God is left. He has left Jerusalem. He has left the temple. Wherever the Spirit goes, they go. And this now it's appearing to Ezekiel in Babylon. So now they're they're in now the Spirit and the glory of the Lord is in Babylon. Now, what does this mean? Well, essentially what took place is Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Daniel, Isaiah all talked about how God's going to leave Jerusalem and he's going to go with those being led off in captivity. He's going to be with those being led off into Babylon. So he was with Daniel, he's with Ezekiel, he's with all those people, flourishing them, making them thrive and growing them. So now, wherever that Spirit goes, that is what is taking place. And then now what we see in Revelation is the glory of the Lord and those four living creatures. They're filling the temple with smoke to feed the final plagues of the final wrath of God. Now, okay, well, what about this smoke? Like, why does God smoke like this? Well, there's a couple different reasons he will. First of all, in Psalm 104, we can see in verse 31, may the glory of the Lord endure forever. May the Lord rejoice in his works. He looks on the earth and it trembles. He touches the hills and they smoke. I will sing to the Lord as long as I live. I will sing praise to my God while I have my being. May my meditation be sweet to him. I will be glad in the Lord. May sinners be consumed from the earth and the wicked be no more. Bless the Lord, O my soul. Praise the Lord. It's a cleansing. His smoke is a cleansing, but it's not just a cleansing. It also is the finality of the warring of the saints. It's a finality of war. It's God showing that he fights for the warriors who stand up for him. And we see that if we go to Psalm 144, starting verse 1. Blessed be the Lord my rock, who trains my hands for war and my fingers for battle. My loving kindness and my fortress, my high tower, my deliverer, my shield and the one in whom I take refuge, who subdues my people under me. Lord, what is man, that you take knowledge of him, or the son of man, that you are mindful of him? Man is like a breath, his days are like a passing shadow. Bow down your heavens, O Lord, and come down, touch the mountains, and they shall smoke. So now what we're seeing if we kind of just take everything, God smokes because it's his glory. His glory rips like a fire. And God smokes when he is fighting for people, when he is ready to commit justice on the earth. He smokes. When we see these four living creatures, wherever they're going, that's where God is. Like, they're on the throne. They move around. Wherever God goes, that's where they're going. Now, if we go back to Revelation and we take a look, after these things I looked, and behold, the temple of the tabernacle of testimony in heaven was open, and out of the temple came the seven angels, having the seven plagues, clothed in pure bright linen, having their chests girded with golden bands. Then one of the four living creatures gave to the seven angels 7 golden bowls full of the wrath of God who lives forever and ever. The temple was filled with smoke from the glory of God and from his power. And no one was able to enter the temple till the 7 plagues of the 7 angels were completed. And I just kind of want to remind you, like I said in the last episode, as we jump to the very first bowl of the malignant sores, that these are for those marked by the beast, or those who worship his name or his number. These are not for us. It's not necessarily good news, but it is as if the cavalry has arrived, and now we get to watch the hand of God commit justice on the earth. He fights for us. This is the part of the training our hands for war and our fingers for battle, because this is how God does for us. Welcome to a series called The End of Times, where we're going through the book of Revelation, verse by verse, to try our best to see what it is we can expect and what it is we should be doing in the end times. And as we've gone through the book of Revelation, verse by verse, where we are as we've just began chapter 16, and what we're seeing is John is in the throne room of heaven, and the temple of the tabernacle of testimony is filling with smoke, and out of that smoke is feeding these bowls of what is referred to as the final plagues on the earth, and it completes the wrath of God. So this is it. This is the end of any sort of destruction that God's going to do, and it is brutal. And now what we're seeing is, at the beginning of chapter 16, we talked about on the last episode kind of what this throne is like and what is feeding these plagues. But now we're going to take a look at the plagues themselves. We're just going to pick it up in 16, starting verse 1. Then I heard a loud voice from the temple saying to the 7 angels, "Go and pour out the bowls of the wrath of God on the earth." Now I want to pause right there, because the very first bowl that we're going to see is malignant sores. And we're going to get into that in just a second. But I want to kind of take this verse for a second, because I want to address a couple things. First of all, these are angels doing this. So I'll just read again. Then I heard a loud voice from the temple saying to the 7 angels, "Go and pour out the bowls of the wrath of God on the earth." Now, I want to take a moment and talk about these angels. First and foremost, a third of the angels, a countless number of angels, but a third of them fell. They were disobedient to God. They fell to the earth. They slept with women and had weird giant children, and God cast them to the earth. There was no place for them. So they were on the earth, and they've been here tormenting us ever since. That's why there is a spiritual war on this earth. That's why when Adam and Eve had this ability to open their eyes and see evil in the world, God had to, eternal life couldn't exist anymore, because otherwise it'd just be eternal evil. So where we are now is that there's now 2/3 of the angels will do exactly what God says. They will do everything that He says. They will obey Him. If God says to kill 100,000 people one night, they will do that, and they have done that. If He says, go pour out this wrath, my wrath on the earth, they're going to do that. Now, with that being said, it's the angels doing it. But what are these plagues? Well, let's start by looking at how God works through plagues. Like, how does He work through plagues? Because He's done this in the past. We saw this in Egypt at the beginning of Exodus, this plagues of Egypt, and a lot of them are very similar. So we're kind of going to run some parallels between these plagues to see how God works through plagues. So we're just going to kind of jump into Exodus a bit, just to kind of just poke at that before, because we're going to spend many episodes going over every single bowl and every single plague, and then we're going to relate it. But let's take a look at really what's taking place here. So we're going to take a look at Exodus, starting in chapter 9, verse 8. So the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "Take for yourselves handfuls of ashes from a furnace, and let Moses scatter it towards the heaven in the sight of Pharaoh. And it will become fine dust in all the land of Egypt, and it will cause boils that break out in sores on man and beasts throughout all the land of Egypt." So what we're looking at is essentially the same thing, but this is highly contagious and quick moving, because what we're about to see is He throws these ashes in the air, and immediately everybody around there starts bursting out in boils. We'll go on in 10. Then they took ashes from the furnace and stood before Pharaoh, and Moses scattered them towards heaven, and they caused boils that break out in sores on man and beasts. And the magicians could not stand before Moses because of the boils, for the boils were on the magicians and on all the Egyptians. But the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, and he did not heed them, just as the Lord had spoken to Moses. So this particular plague, God is the same as yesterday as He was today. Chances are it's going to be a very similar thing. This is highly contagious. Highly contagious. I mean, He threw ashes in the air, and here we got an angel with a bowl that's coming out of a furnace as well. There's a lot of parallels of how God works through these malignant sores that He's about to pour onto the earth. But it's more than that. Like, God gives us a warning, and we're going to take a look at that first. There's definitely a warning, and we can see that in 9. The 7th plague, hail, it says in 19, "Therefore send now and gather your livestock and all that you have in the field, for the hail shall come down on every man and every beast which is found in the field and is not brought home, and they shall die." He who feared the word of the Lord among the servants of Pharaoh made his servants and his livestock flee to the houses. But he who did not regard the word of the Lord left his servants and his livestock in the field. Then the Lord said to Moses, stretch out your hand towards heaven, that there may be hail in all the land of Egypt, on man, on beast, and on every herb of the field throughout the land of Egypt. So ultimately what took place here was God gave him a warning. Like, he gave him a heads up. Like, heads up, this is coming. We see the same thing in Revelation, and it's very important that we heed the warning, because the warning took action. The warning was essentially saying, hey, I'm going to make it hail, but I'm giving you the heads up. It's coming. And what those who feared the Lord, not only did they fear the Lord, but they took action. Those who did not fear the Lord, they did not take action. So there's a lot that we're going to see with these plagues. Keep in mind, we are going to be here during it. There's a lot that we're going to see with these plagues that require us to take action. Many people in the land of Egypt, among Pharaoh's people, could have survived this hailstorm if they feared the Lord and took action. But it's even more than that. God gives us a way of escape, and we're going to see that in Exodus 9. We'll just pick it up in 23. And Moses stretched out his rod towards heaven, and the Lord sent thunder and hail, and fire darted to the ground, and the Lord rained hail on the land of Egypt. So there was hail and fire mingled with the hail, so very heavy that there was none like it in all the land of Egypt since it became a nation. And the hail struck throughout the whole land of Egypt, all that was in the field, both man and beast, and the hail struck every herb in the field and broke every tree of the field. Only the land of Goshen, where the children of Israel were, there was no hail. So there's a place, like there's always a place. There's always somewhere that's not going to get hammered on. You know, and oftentimes when people say, well, God promises a way of escape, or, you know, this is what I'm getting at. Like, this is the exact idea. What you're seeing here is where the Israelites are, there is no hail. Everywhere else is getting destroyed. And there's a few individuals that were smart, and they went inside before all this began. But even more than that, the 10th plague, now again, keep in mind there's 10 plagues of Egypt, there's 7 in his completing his plague, in his final plagues. The 10th was the death of the firstborn. It was a very significant plague. It's the one that brought more mourning than every single other thing. But what it came with for the Israelites was it came with, again, some action they had to take. It wasn't just, I'm Israeli, I'm not going to lose my firstborn. No, they had to slay the blood of the lamb, and they had to paint the doorpost. And obviously there's a lot of parallels through the salvation of Jesus Christ in that. But it still required them to take action. You can't, you know, all these plagues are going to require you to take some action. If you're going to survive them, they're going to require you to fear the Lord first. Fear the Lord first, because a lot of these we're going to see are just those who don't fear the Lord. But it's going to require you to take action. And that's why we're dedicating this episode to understanding how God works through plagues. So what are we to understand in all this? Well, understand you need to be able to hear God's warning. They're there. He doesn't have anything else to say. It's all in his word. It's there. You're either heeding his warning or you're not. Be where the plagues aren't. That's a critical piece, is be where the plagues are not. Don't be around Babylon, for example, when Babylon is getting destroyed. And follow instructions. There's some clear instructions. Follow them, you survive. You don't follow them, you might not survive. Follow the instructions. This is really one of the most important pieces that we're going to get out of. You know, I started every episode, you know, we're at, I think, 105 episodes now, or 106. Started every single episode with trying to understand what it is we need to be doing in the end times. This is kind of at the core of what that is understanding how do we survive God's final wrath and his final plagues. So love to hear your thoughts on all that. Kind of go back to this Revelation 16 verse 1. Then I heard a loud voice from the temple saying to the 7 angels, go and pour out the bowls of the wrath of God on the earth. And we'll see what happens with that first bowl in the very next episode. So love to hear your thoughts on all this. Put in the comments below. If you like this video, click like and subscribe. Feel called to support this channel with Patreon, that link is below. But the most important part of this channel is we take prayer requests, so never hesitate to send that in. Thank you for watching this episode of God, Family, and Guns. And as always, love God, love your family, and love guns.